Hey everyone, Draco Magnius here for another episode of Drakengard 2 Weapon Stories. This time we are covering the Former Heroes set. Every weapon in this set was a weapon that was used by a character in Drakengard 1 that was on the protagonist's side. Hence why Heroes has air quotes around it. Well, technically it has actual quotes around it if you're watching this on YouTube, which all of you are. But now I'm rambling. Anyway, this series starts... I'm doing them in the order that we've actually gotten them, because none of the stories actually link together, unfortunately. It's just they are set that all of the people that used to own these weapons were related in the fact that they were all protagonists. So I'm just running with that. But without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
I'm so hungry.
The Hobgoblin decided to help his boss as he always did. Usually, he had to get food by helping out with various odd jobs, but today he would get a meal without having to do anything at all. An attack on a human village was planned for the following evening, and a hearty meal was provided in preparation. So they charged into battle, expecting a swift victory, but the humans repelled their attacks with great determination, and the fight raged on. In the midst of the carnage, the Hobgoblin fell into a shallow well. There he found a magnificent scythe. It was the failed creation of a demented magician. The scythe was designed to increase the wielder's desire to win. In reality, however, it brought out other, uncontrollable desires in its wielder. Deemed useless, it had been thrown into the well. The Hobgoblin climbed out of the well. With the scythe in his hand, hungry for food and blood, he began to kill humans left and right. But the scythe's power soon began to overwhelm the Hobgoblin. When all of the humans were dead, he began to bite and maim other goblins. Even murdering and eating the entirety of his own tribe failed to satiate his appetite. And finally, he slit his own throat with the scythe. It was later found by a beautiful elf. This spear belonged to a gentle and mild-mannered man. He lived in shame for a certain antisocial tendency, so he avoided the company of strangers and lived deep inside the forest with his brothers. He led a quiet life, until one day the Empire attacked his land, slaughtered his brothers, and torched his house. In despair, he tried to commit suicide, but just as he was about to die, a malicious fairy came to him and forced him into a pact, saving his life. As the price of his pact, he lost his sight, but with his newfound power, he rose up against the Imperial forces and fought to save the world from the tyranny of the Empire. Alongside the voiceless savior, he prevented the end of the world. Though he was now a hero, his shameful tendencies remained, so he returned to his life of solitude, a vilified exile. 18 years ago, when the world faced destruction, a human and a dragon dared to fight the gods. In the end, the dragon gave her life to save the world. Left behind, the man wandered the desolate lands, his heart full of sorrow. Accompanying him on his journey was the very girl who brought mankind to the brink of extinction. Betraying the alliance he'd formed during the war, the old hierarch altered the seal to increase the dragon's burden. When the wandering man felt the dragon's agony, the girl sensed his distress and made her escape. Alone again, his mind was consumed by thoughts of vengeance, and his hollow soul burned with bloodlust once more. Kaim hunted down the treacherous hierarch. Ignoring his pleas for mercy, he killed him with a single blow. However, Kaim's efforts were in vain. The seal was permanently altered. The burden was tearing the dragon's mind apart. So the world's former savior faced a familiar choice. But this time, Kaim would choose the dragon over the world. Kaim and Angelus were finally reunited when the keys to the seal had been broken. Once more the world faced destruction, but at least they were together, complete. They vowed then never to part again, a vow they kept until the end. After that, only Kaim's sword remained in the doomed world. A couple was elated by the news that they were to have a child. As this was their first, their friends held a feast the next day to celebrate. Many came to the party, among them a prophet dressed in a richly embroidered clerical gown. The prophet presented the couple with a short sword and said, "This blade will make a master swordsman of the wielder. Use it to protect your child." When the husband grasped its hilt, he felt its power coursing through his body, making him stronger. This was no ordinary sword. "The child who will be born is a child of heaven. The child who will be born is a child of man. Should the child bring disaster upon mankind, kill it with this sword." The couple's faces paled, and the husband raised the sword to strike the prophet, but he had already disappeared. After the day of the feast, the wife, unable to forget the prophet's words, grew ever more gloomy. The husband used the power of the sword to become a soldier, and returned home ever more infrequently. Eventually their child was born, or rather, a pair of twins was born. A beautiful boy and girl. So to recap, Roach was crazy because she picked up a psychotic axe. Leonard is currently still wandering the world in exile because he is a pedophile. Kaim's story and Angela's story is incredibly sad, but hey, at least they got to stay together at the end. And the reason Mana's mother didn't fucking love her was because some asshole old man gave them a sword and said, "Hey, one of your children," well no, said, "Hey, your child's gonna be awesome, but if he ever isn't awesome, kill him with a sword." And since two were born, they assumed Mana was evil. Well, you know, mother assumed Mana was evil, but details, who needs them?